Alright, so I'm recording. So yeah, on that first one, I didn't think there was a problem there because, like I said, there was two dials and it was relatively simple to see, yeah, there's two dials and that it would be real quick to change them. So I didn't think that was the problem. How about you guys?
Oh yeah, I didn't think that was a problem because it would have been easy to change them. She just didn't know how to.
Right.
So that I agree.
Either of you two?
There might be an argument for because um, the you don't know what controls what is confusing. It would make it less efficient. But I think if it's just down to the actual act of turning the knob, that part is efficient.
Yeah, see, I thought that under familiarity, that would be the problem there. Like you said, not understanding the knobs would be a
Yeah.
lack of familiarity. But yeah, learnability I thought was, I mean, I don't think it'd be hard to learn, but I'm not, and I guess I'm on the fence on this one. I can see where it might not be hard to learn, but at the same time, the directions that were on the fridge were not clear. Um, it gave a few use cases, but left out the other ones, so if you had anything in between, you wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, I thought that was a problem because if someone showed her how to do it and what like the different things meant, she would be able to figure it out. But I don't think you could figure that out like on your own, except through like a lot of trial and a lot of time because it takes time for refrigerators to like change temperature and see the results.
Right. I'm actually looking through. It looks like Dan did the other ones. He did presentation, perception, interpretation, all that stuff.
Oh
Oh.
no.
Whoops. Oh, that's fine. I'll just close that. I was looking at it like, wait, that doesn't look anything like what we were talking about. Yeah. Did
Yeah,
anyone
and what
go ahead?
what I put on this one for learnability, I just said the learning curve shouldn't be very steep here because you're right. Like she'll have to play with it to figure it out, but I think that's still more familiarity than learnability. Like if there was a manual in front of
Right.
her, the amount of learning that this path takes once you figure out what is what, the learning is pretty short that you actually have to learn for this model. It's just the
Right.
familiarity and everything else that's a little like that takes a little bit more. So I don't think the learning curve, the path to learning this is very
Yeah.
steep at all, and that makes learnability low.
And I would concede your point. See, like I said, I was on the fence with this one. On one hand, I was thinking, well, the directions are on the fridge and they're unclear. But on the other, you're right. The user manual would be able to explain to them, I guess, how to do certain things. And I guess we could call it on a vote if there's some discrepancy there. Because I'm leaning towards you, what you're saying. Like maybe there isn't a problem there because there is a user manual. But if she's lost the user manual, there's the other question. Like, I mean, after you buy a fridge, how long do you keep the manual for?
Right.
Right.
Well, and you usually don't need a manual for a
Right.
fridge. You know what I mean? But this fridge seems to be the opposite case.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would assume there should be one dial
Right.
because you're only adjusting one thing, which is the temperature.
Right.
Well, isn't that the fridge and freezer, or am I reading that problem wrong?
Yeah, most fridges have two. Well, at least my fridge has two dials, one for the freezer, one
Right.
for the.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
one
okay.
for each.
Yeah,
But
I
the
thought it
weird
was.
things have
Yeah, it was
numbers and
freeze.
letters.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was really confusing. Like, they had the number system, which is fine. It said the number and C, B, and D. But what about A, E? Like,
And they have two D's. It was like what?
yeah.
Yeah, D twice, and there was no A. That was just weird.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing. So that's why I put it for a problem. But I can concede the other. So I mean, it looks like we can resubmit these if there is problems. So, I mean, which one do we want to go for that we can agree on for now?
I'm okay with either. I'm gonna be honest. I got confused with like some of them, and learnability was one that is kind of like I don't know, like kind of tricky. It kind of mixed in with others.
Mhm.
Because it says it is not the amount that needs to be learned, nor how pleasurable the journey may be. Instead, learnability is a function of the difficulty of the learning process.
And see, I would argue this probably isn't difficult to learn. So I'm gonna maybe say that's not a problem on my for my vote anyway.
Okay, I would say if you're gonna say that, you should put like if she had a user manual or
Yeah.
something.
maybe with that conditional, it's not a problem if we have that manual, because then the learning's very straightforward. But with the information we have in that picture, then I with that definition you just read, Ivy, I think helps a lot too. Saying there is like without that, it's very difficult, almost impossible to learn without
Yeah.
tons of trial and error.
I stared at that for a while and I was like, I can figure this out, and you just can't. It doesn't make any sense.
Any problem with what I've written? Except that's a run-on. What?
Should
What?
we add another conditional saying maybe, however, without the user manual, learnability is definitely a problem or something?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Trying to figure out how to fix my run-on.
Maybe it's that
It's a different way.
semicolon.
It's a different way to word it. Instead of it should not be very steep, and just say it is.
Learning curve would be no learning curve. A very short
It would
learning
be
curve.
easy
Yeah.
to learn.
Easy to learn. There you go.
Yeah, I would put in that conditional statement though.
Okay with that one?
Yes.
Okay. Familiarity, I think that again that was the main problem here. She was unfamiliar with the dials, which is why she couldn't just whip it to whatever number she needed to and move on.
Yeah, I agree.
But you two.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Simplicity I didn't think was a problem because again it's two dials. And even though she doesn't understand the mechanics, if she did, it really wouldn't be a complicated thing to work it.
I agree, actually. I had written it else, but now I just looked up simplicity and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I agree with yours.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. And mapping. So I thought maybe that was a problem because there is directions on there, and maybe that can be confusing because the directions aren't overtly clear. But I could also be persuaded to think it wasn't a problem.
Do any of you know? Because mapping was one of the ones that I was confused on. Do any of you have like a more solid
So
definition than what the
what
book
I
had?
put for mine, because mapping said clues within the design encourage the user to form a consistent mental model, right? So what I took that as is, are there clues, if you look right at it, are there clues to let you kind of figure it out in your brain what's going on? And for this one I put clues are hard to find because using numbers and letters also with instructions that seem inconsistent makes this very hard to map. Like I can't map this in my mind. And so that's kind of what I'm using mapping as, is just clues. If I look at something, are there enough clues that I can say, okay, I can figure out what's going on? And that's basically
Right.
what mapping's saying to me.
Okay.
I'm gonna get rid of what I had and just put down what you had. I like that better. Okay. Anyone have any objections with that or anything they'd like to add to that or whatever?
I think it's good.
Okay. So I was trying to keep this one on one page. There we go. Visibility. Motivation. I don't think that was the problem. She wasn't messing up because she wasn't motivated to do anything.
Well, motivation isn't like motivation. I think motivation was a problem because in the book it defines it as like how fun it is to interact with,
Mhm.
and it's you wouldn't want to interact with it,
Well, I mean,
you know.
I don't know. We don't know whether she would enjoy turning two dials.
Well,
Because she wanted to interact with the software. She wanted to fix her refrigerator. She wanted to go in and fix the problem that she was having, which is why she
But the
came up to it.
but it
question
wouldn't
isn't
be
what the user
fun.
wanted to do with their feelings beforehand. It's when they look at the design, how does it make you feel? That's motivation.
Right.
How do you
Yeah.
feel when you look at the design? And personally, when I looked at it, I felt frustrated just looking at it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought this still contributed. Like I didn't feel. If we look at the ranking on that one from 0, -1 to -2,
Mhm.
motivation says 2 is like members of the target user group enjoy using the interface, yielding feelings of satisfaction, pleasure, and similar positive emotional responses. And the -2 is the target's user dominant emotional response to the interface is strongly negative, such as distaste, irritation, insult, or impatience. And I think this would get a -2 on
Oh
design
yeah,
personally
for
for
sure.
motivation, because when I
Okay.
look at it, I'm just like, oh, like why would you do that?
So what would you say on this one?
I would say it's a problem.
No, right. I mean, how would you clarify that it being a problem?
Oh, sorry. I would say that you like looking at it, it's frustrating. So probably her trying to deal with it would just it it's frustrating, and I think it even says that she gets even more confused.
Yep, confused and frustration is what I said. I said, with these instructions and knobs, I feel frustrated just looking at this picture. Using the system would make the user feel confused, not excited to use it. That's what
Yeah,
I put in word for word.
that's better than what I said.
It was good. It was the same thing.
So do I put -2 on this one?
I don't think we need to score these first ones. We might
Okay.
need to, but I don't. We haven't scored any of the other ones, and I
But
don't think we need to
Right.
tell them. And I could be wrong. What do you think, Ivy / Michael /
well,
So
Steven?
so one thing I'd put for motivation is that they're probably highly motivated to get things at the right temperature for their refrigerator or freezer so things don't thaw or
See, that's how I interpreted it, but yeah, I think they're right that the interface is really what they're talking about. The motivation to use the interface, not necessarily the motivation to come up to it and try and turn a dial.
okay.
Because I was in the same boat as you, Michael. But yeah, I can concede their point. Like, I guess I misunderstood motivation until a moment ago. So my motivation points are probably wrong. Just understand that for what it is. I thought trust was also a problem, because she didn't just trust that anything she did was going to be right.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's basically what I put down, that there would,
Yeah.
like, her confusion would cause a lack of trust when she's using the interface.
And see, the bit that got me was she had to wait 24 hours to even know if she was doing it right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. I did that 24-hour wait to trust and visibility, because both, like I have to change something and then wait. There's no temperature dial, which would be its visibility. There's no temperature output.
Right.
But also in trust, like I change something, I have no idea if it's working or not, and I can't trust that.
Yeah, so if there was like a little screen that showed what temperature it was, maybe that would be different. But because, she's working off the assumption that any changes she makes, she has to wait for an entire day to even know if it did anything and if it worked in the right way. I wouldn't have trust in that system. I didn't think visibility was a problem either. It sounds like we were all on the same board on trust. I thought visibility wasn't a problem because she was able to find the dials with no difficulty.
So this one was kind of like a weird one to me because I thought it was a problem because it didn't have that, hey, your refrigerator is now 20 degrees. It didn't immediately output what temperature it was. But I might have that wrong because I didn't fully understand visibility.
Also, the very short version is the degree in which the functionality and the data of the system is available to the user when he needs it. And I was thinking, well, that's the two knobs. I mean, that's really all the data that is available, and it's real easy to find those. She opened up the freezer, and there they were.
I don't know because
Well,
when
yeah.
I see, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem, Ivy. What I was saying is I split. I would have ranked this a 0 if it asked us to do the numbers on this one, because I feel like the functionality is there. It's very easy to find the functionality, but the data returned from the system. So if we were thinking this as a computer, I punch in my data, easy to do right here. But do I have any return data? Like, no, I don't, because the data return, I have to wait 24 hours, then I have to stick a thermometer in myself and measure it. And so the target user can locate all the data and functionality, but there's definitely some inconvenience, and
Should I say
it's
both?
going to take a little bit of work. I don't know. I don't know if there's a medium ground.
Well,
Semi
if there is a
problem. I don't
0, then
know.
that sounds to me like a medium ground.
Yeah, and the scoring there is, but I don't know about problem versus no problem.
Well, I mean,
Because also,
go ahead.
with the controls, yes, the controls are there, but they're still very vague, and you don't know what they mean.
One thing I'd say with the visibility is that it says in the problem description that she finds these controls in the back of the top shelf. So it looks like it's pretty
Well,
hidden.
that's standard though. That's most refrigerators are that way. You'll find them in the top of either side of the refrigerator.
So that's a familiarity thing, but I wonder if that's overall in fridges, something that could be different.
Where's mine in my fridge? I want to go look because I don't remember. Because I feel like it's right in the front center, isn't it?
I think mine's in the top right
Yeah.
of the fridge.
Mine's in front center. I mean, in the back, it's really far. You'd really have to push aside all your food and bend down.
Back
Yeah.
top too.
Yeah, mine's
That's
like right as you open the door.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a more modern thing. I think in the old days like this, it was just like get it out of the way.
which lowers our visibility. Michael's right on that then.
But then there's the
That's
other
why
thing.
they changed.
It doesn't sound like she had an issue finding it.
That's true. That's true. I think it's kind of borderline, this one. This one's just, I think it could go either way, and so it's both a problem and not a problem depending on how
So
we
that's
look
why
at
I said
it.
both. You know, she's able to locate it, but there's no data return like you said. So I mean, that's a good point. I hadn't considered the data return point.
Yeah, and I think explaining it like that will help us pass on the teacher. I think that's
Yeah, I
good.
think so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm happy to move on from the refrigerator. You guys good?
Yep.
Okay. The
Yes.
next one is the range top. I guess the first time I looked at it, I didn't realize there was those little markers to show where it was. And I think for me, the main problem for her was just the haste. So I didn't think efficiency was the problem because it's just a few little knobs, and you just have to turn the knob to whichever familiar ways there are to turn it, and it'll control it real easily. So I didn't think that was a problem.
Right. I agree. This one was a confusing one because there's like pictures right on it.
But they're kind of lower. So we'll get there in visibility, but I think those pictures are small and below the knob. So if you ran over to it and looked from above, you might not
That's
even notice
true.
them.
That's true. If you looked at it from above, you wouldn't see them.
Right, and that's why I put it under familiarity, because that was the problem. She didn't know where to look for them, because I think all stovetops have, the little markings to where they are, but this one was just in a harder to see location.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So yeah, I think the efficiency was definitely not the problem because they're just like any other stovetop. There was nothing else to do. Like you didn't have to press a button. So I know sometimes there's like little buttons you have to press to turn it, or push it in, or pull it out, or things like that.
I agree.
How about you two?
Sounds good to me. This one's good.
Okay. Learnability, I didn't think that was a problem either. I mean, as soon as you saw the little diagrams, you would know how to use it.
I would agree with that.
As soon as anyone says how to use it too, it'd just be straightforward. Nobody would have to teach you how to use a stove. You try it and it works.
Yeah. But again, I think
Yeah,
familiarity... Go ahead. Sorry. I know.
I was just gonna say
on.
it should be easy to learn with learnability because they've got the diagrams for each of them.
Right. So again, like I said, familiarity I think was the main problem that I saw, where she just wasn't familiar with the stovetop and just flustered.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyone want to add anything or?
I said this was not a problem, but I think I'm wrong. I think you guys are right because it was a different stovetop than what she was used to. Because familiarity to me, when I looked at it, I was like, everybody's used a range, like that's as straightforward as any other range. But her problem was that she wasn't familiar with that range. So I didn't agree with that.
One thing that may be less familiar would be if she's used to a like an electric range rather than a gas one.
But even still, you go ahead.
And sometimes, like to get it to ignite, you have to turn the knob in a certain place for the igniter to go off.
Yeah, you have to like turn it to the right for a little bit until it like makes those little sounds, and then you turn it on.
Yeah.
Right, but her issue wasn't turning it on; it was turning it off.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, then that's just dumb. You just put it back to
Michael,
where it
that's
was.
exactly how I felt with this whole
So I
problem.
was like,
this one,
well,
I was like, this was
the
just a
knob that's
stupidity error.
turned. The other one should be like in the off position.
Right? Like, ID10T error here, guys. Just continue on.
It's alright. It's on video. What doesn't matter. I didn't think simplicity was a problem. I thought it was plenty simple. No more than any other stovetop, I guess.
Would you consider the tiny pictures like down below them like a problem though?
Or, I mean,
Oh, I guess that might not be simplicity. Sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say that's more like you said, visibility. And I think all stovetops have little images, and they have different places where they put them. So I didn't think that was a problem. And as soon as you realized where they were, I don't think you would ever have that problem again.
Yeah, I keep forgetting what simplicity is.
Because it says the amount the user needs to know to master the system. All you really need to know is which burner goes where, and as soon as you figure that out, you're done.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. We all good with that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so mapping. I didn't think mapping was the problem because again, the directions are clearly fixed, and you could find them without really too much difficulty if you were looking for them.
Yeah, I don't know. This one's kind of like a tricky one. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of split on this one.
Because the directions on mapping, the short version says, clues within the design encourage the user to form a consistent mental model of the system. So I thought, well, that would be the models, the diagrams of which one they activate. So as soon as you knew which one they were, you would know, I guess, based on that, how to change it.
And on top of that, the knobs are also, the middle knob for the middle burner is in the middle. The two left knobs are on the left and the two right knobs are on the right. And if you look at those pictures, both the back burners are on the right and both the front burners are on the left. So it's a consistent clues that let you know, like, you can have a consistent model by looking at it every time without it switching up. So I didn't think that was a problem either.
Looks like I've done visibility wrong. I think that was before I understood visibility, so I'll have to change that one.
One thing that I think could be improved for the mapping is they wouldn't need the diagram at all if they arranged the knobs to be in the same layout as the burners.
So like vertically?
Yeah, so have the left knobs and the right knobs stacked vertically. Then you don't even need a diagram.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I think in
point.
order to keep it sleek and to keep it from being so chunky vertically, this is the model that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I thought motivation was the problem because again, I thought she was flustered and just didn't have time to really study it. Cause I've been there where I've tried to do something in a moment and not really taken time to study what I'm doing.
But doesn't that drop down our visibility a little bit? Because if you just glance at the system and it's not easy to see, like my burners I'm looking at right here, like the picture's right there, big, easy to see. And on those ones, it's kind of below the knob and the knob's kind of in front as well. So it makes it really kind of hard to see those pictures, in my opinion. I didn't even notice them at first, if I'm honest. So
I didn't either.
Maybe that's a Jacob problem. But that makes it, to me, seem like visibility is a little bit of a problem at least because it's not super visible.
Visibility was definitely a problem. I'm going to change that. And like I said, all of my visibility are going to be wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think motivation was part of the problem because she was motivated to do it quickly, and so she didn't have the time to stop and look for the directions.
Yeah, so I think she felt frustrated and didn't want to interact with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Because motivation isn't the motivation on the side of the user; it's the design motivating
Right.
the user to use it, right?
Right, but what I mean is, she also didn't want to turn the wrong ones, so
All
she...
right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
I don't like that. I think that sums it up okay, but I don't know. Again, I'm just glad that we can resubmit these if there's any issues. She did say that the first one was going to be the hardest one, so that gave me some hope.
I don't know if you're using motivated in the right way there. Because like motivated, it's just weird to think of it motivated. Like it was fun to turn, like it's fun to play with, you know?
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I don't,
We're
you know what
talking
I'm
about,
trying to say?
I think what I still think this is the one you're having a little issue understanding, Stephen, and with all love saying this, but the difference is not the motivation of the user themselves. This isn't a person's feelings where they are, it's how the design makes you feel.
Right.
So we're all talking about UI. And so it's not like she could be flustered and you could go up to like a beautiful app and be like, oh, this app makes me feel happy, even if you're flustered. And so the motivation of that is 100% great because it's inspiring those good feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And a bad motivation is like something that like you look at and you're like, oh, that's disgusting, like that fridge, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that makes me just super frustrated to try to use it. And so motivation for this design, if we step back from Hannah for a second and look at the motivation of the design
I
itself,
see what you're saying.
Like I just think the designs, it's decent. It's not great. It's not causing me a lot of love for it. It's not causing me any hate for it. It's just there. It's a decent design. But the motivation, that's kind of what I think motivation's trying to say. And I think that's what Ivy's trying to say, if I'm right, Ivy.
Yes.
Is that what's that design making people feel when they look at it? And it could be still part of a problem before we change this completely, because she does get to it and the design doesn't give her any positive feelings. It doesn't help her figure things out like better in her emotional state. So the motivation still could be improved. I just don't think it's like her
could be both
her emotional state at the time that we're looking at motivation as.
Right.
I would give it a 0. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not the leading problem, but it's really not helping.
Yeah, and if they're asking us for the most biggest the biggest problem on each of these sets, I'd definitely not say it's motivation. I definitely say it's like familiarity.
Right.
Oh yeah, familiarity is by far the top.
You could also add there, but it doesn't make her feel good to use it. Like it doesn't give her any like happy feelings. You could add that at like the end.
How about she does not have a positive experience with the burner?
Yeah, she doesn't have a positive one, but it's not like the worst one, you know?
Right. I don't know. How would you change what I've written? I'm open to interpretation.
I mean, I would kind of change that design part because I don't know. This is kind of a confusing one to like write for.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't know. This is kind of a tricky one to write for.
Would you guys put who said it was not a problem? And I can mesh it together, I guess, like Frankenstein.
So what I put straightforward on this one is I said, looking at myself using this design, I said I'm not overly excited to use this design. It doesn't show anything that would bring me great satisfaction, and it doesn't deter me from using it either. So that's kind of how I left it. Like, it's not the design that's causing me. It doesn't cause great, like, wanting to use it. Like, doesn't inspire good feelings, but it doesn't inspire negative feelings either.
What if instead of both you put like neither? Because it's not really the problem, but it's all, yeah.
Well, if it's both, it's not a problem and is a problem.
I don't know.
Both and neither about mean the same thing to me here.
Yeah,
So
they do. I was thinking keep it consistent, because up above we kind of said both on visibility.
That's true. You can put both.
Are we okay with that? Anything else you'd like to add? I'm not married to what is said there. It doesn't really bother me at all.
I think we should just move on.
Okay.
There you go.
I thought trust was a problem again because she wasn't familiar with it and didn't want to turn the wrong knob.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I had down for trust.
I had it wasn't a problem just because once she changes the knobs, like, the feedback should be okay, but maybe that kind of anxiety to change the knob
Right,
is
that's
where
where I
she's
was
having
going
trouble.
from. Since
So,
we
I
don't
agree
know what
with that.
happened afterwards, we know what happened during it, so the trust was a problem.
Was a problem, yeah, for sure. Not the main problem, but
No.
definitely a problem. I'm
I
good
would
there.
give it a -1.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm changing my answer to that one. Anyone have any issues, or what did you guys get for that visibility?
Yeah, I agree with that one.
That looks good.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I think just the larger diagrams would help with visibility. That's about it.
Alright. We good to move on?
Yeah.
Now, I have to say the Dvorak keyboard, however you say that, that looks just mean to me. I don't think I would ever like that one, which means my motivation is wrong. But anyway, so we'll move on. Efficiency, I thought that was a problem because he was used to typing a certain way on a QWERTY keyboard and just was not familiar with that other keyboard at all.
So I was kind of split on this one because I agree with what you said, but however, apparently there's like evidence that people who use that keyboard become more productive and like their speed of typing.
I'm sure they do, but I think it was a problem for Quinn, who was trying to type with it. So I don't know.
What I'd put exactly what Ivy said. I said, we know that the Dvorak keyboard is more efficient in its placement. However, coming from a QWERTY keyboard, Quinn is less efficient in using this keyboard because he hasn't become familiar with it.
Right.
So the design might be more efficient for people trained on the design.
Yeah, I think just acknowledging both sides of it, that it is more efficient if that's what you've already learned to do, but obviously not if you have not learned how to use it.
How's that? See, I would give that a -1 if it were me, but I could be talked into a 0 on that one.
I don't think I would put that one as a problem though. I think I would say it's both, because if someone learned the Dvorak keyboard like without having the QWERTY, then they would be more efficient.
Yeah.
But if they were coming from a QWERTY, it would be really hard to make that change. But maybe that doesn't belong in efficiency. I'm not sure.
Maybe. I'll put it as both. Like I said, I could be talked into that.
I think that's good for me though, personally.
Yeah. Learnability, I thought that was a problem because he spent 4 hours trying to learn it and gave up, so it was clearly not an easy thing to learn.
Yeah, I agree because in the score thing that it talks about, it says a target user group, and I think probably QWERTY keyboard users are a target group for the Dvorak keyboard. So I thought that one was a big problem.
Right.
Everybody's used a QWERTY lately, and yeah, the learning curve, 100 hours or something for a learning curve on a Dvorak. That's a pretty steep
That's
curve.
huge. Yeah.
So the path of learning it's pretty intense.
Jeez, I didn't know it was that high. I knew it was high, I didn't know it was that high.
I think about when you first learned QWERTY back in elementary school or whatever.
Yeah.
How many hours do we spend in the computer lab typing?
Well, that's a good point.
Not think of unlearning something and relearning it.
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
You have
Be
to
even worse.
uninvent the wheel to reinvent the wheel because you're used to typing in a certain way.
Yeah, this would be a thing where it would be much more difficult to learn if you've already learned with QWERTY, because like it would be easier for a child to learn this than an adult.
Right. Yeah. Familiarity again, I think, was a problem because he was unfamiliar with the keyboard. I think that was pretty easy.
I actually thought that one wasn't a problem because he was used to like the concept of a keyboard. You know, they're not like the learning curve is big, but you see it and you know it's a keyboard.
And see, I can see your point for that, but I took it more literally, like, the placement of the keys was completely alien. Like, if I was to place my fingers in the same way, I would expect to find WASD, not left arrow AOE.
And I actually agree with Steven on this one. I put the Dvorak keyboard is the same keyboard, so like the overall size and shape, the design of the size and shape of a keyboard is standard. I know it's a keyboard looking at it, but the familiarity of being able to say, hey, this is exactly like something I used, which on the familiarity scale, the scale says the interface is indistinguishable from other elements with this using the target user's experience. And even number one is the elements are similar in design and usage to other interfaces is likely to have encountered before. So it might be like a 0 or a 1 because it's familiar, but the keys are all messed up. And so as soon as you get on there, it's like, hey, this is a keyboard, but this is like no keyboard I've ever tried to type on before.
Yeah.
And so I put familiarity as his biggest problem personally because I thought it's just completely different layout. It's like looking at a web page. I know it's a web page, but the design is so different. I can't use it.
Right.
Okay.
It'd be like if someone changed, like on a website, if they changed the, or even on your phone, if they changed the text icon to the phone icon and the phone icon to the text, I would always press the wrong one because I'm unfamiliar with it. And
Yeah.
even if they were placed in the same places that they should be in, you know, it would still mess me up.
I can see either point of view.
So I don't know. Now I think the fact that it resembles a keyboard so much makes it even worse for familiarity. If it was shaped completely different, I'd have less trouble learning it. I think. Because I wouldn't keep going back to my QWERTY learning. Anyway, I think we're getting bogged down on that one, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we can move
Have
on.
we? Do we want to say that it's both, or are we good with saying that it's a problem?
I'm okay with saying it's a problem if that's what you guys agree on.
Michael, you've been quiet.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely more of a problem than anything. It's only specific use cases where it would be not a problem, but most of the time it'd be a problem, especially for the scenario that it gives here with the example of Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think you might want to expound on it though and just say, well, Quinn is very familiar with the idea of a keyboard. He's very unfamiliar of like the Dvorak keyboard.
The layout. Yeah, that's great. I like that.
Is that okay? Or should I make any other changes?
That's
I
good to
think
me.
it's good.
Okay. Alright, simplicity. I didn't think that was a problem. Most things are in the same relative location as the QWERTY.
I agree. That's what I had basically. I don't think you need a degree to operate the Dvorak keyboard. I think it's more of a
No.
learnability problem.
Right. What about you guys?
I'm trying to look at what I put. Yes, I put this was not a problem at all. It's just as simple as other keyboards, just different locations.
Mm-hmm. I didn't think mapping was the problem, because again, you can locate the keys you're looking for. It might take you longer, but you can find them.
Yep, they're all labeled the same. They're the same type of layout as other keyboards. So the mapping for being able to figure out the model
Right.
might even be simpler, is what I put, because all the vowels are on one side, most used consonants on the other side on your home row. So it's pretty straightforward. I've actually been interested. I know you said you'd never do this, Stephen, but I'm actually interested in trying out this keyboard. I just can't put in 100 hours during the middle of a semester.
No, I feel you. Yeah,
I've wanted to as well, but I don't want to commit to that.
well, see, the problem is most keyboards that you'll use for work or whatever are going to be QWERTY, and I'd hate to have to like go into a work site or something and then have to try and relearn the old keyboard and then go back and forth like at home to the Dvorak or something, Dvorak or whatever it is. So there's that problem too. You'd have to carry
Yeah,
around a
we don't
keyboard
even know how to
everywhere.
pronounce it.
I know. I'd have to carry around a
That's a
keyboard
tricky
with
part.
me. So I don't know. That's my main motivation for not even wanting to touch it. For motivation, I didn't think that was the problem. But my reasoning's obviously wrong because I didn't understand motivation prior. So
Yeah, I would say it's a problem.
oh yeah, exactly. I would say it was a problem now, but because the way it's laid out, it makes him not even want to look at it. But he did
Yeah.
want to, though. That's the thing. That's why I wasn't sure. Because on the one hand, he wanted to learn it, on the other, he didn't.
So I put for motivation on the Dvorak that it's kind of, I said it was more motivating, so it's not a problem, because the design itself, when he looked at his friend's keyboard and the design, and his friend's like, hey, this could increase productivity,
Mm-hmm.
the motivation, the keyboard, he looked at it, said, hey, this is super exciting, I want to try to use this. And then he tried, and it wasn't the motivation of the keys, the layout that's making him more productive, that's killing him here. So I thought that was not a problem, because it's not the actual layout or the design that's killing him. It's the actual like familiarity and learning curve of trying to get it. So I didn't say it was a motivation problem, because like Michael and I just said, both of us thought, hey, let's try this. Like, it's a motivating design. It's an idea that sounds kind of novel, but it isn't very familiar or learnable.
Well, because it talks about in this scoring about like the user interface. I think he was like entranced by the idea of being more like efficient and faster, but when it came to the actual interacting, that is what made him frustrated.
Yeah. So it could be both.
So I'm still on the side that I think it's a problem.
It could be both. I mean, I can see their point too. I don't know.
So the emotional response to the design, not well, because I'm seeing what you're saying, Ivy. I'm trying to read through this scoring system. He didn't, when he was actually using the design. Yeah, using the user group, using the interface.
I would say
enjoy
both.
using the interface.
Because he started off positively and ended negatively.
And his friend had a great experience. His friend's very excited about using it, who's part of the user group as well. It's not that they don't prefer to use it because of the interface. I don't know. Yeah, I'm on the fence. I could go either way on this.
Because I'm also on the fence, and I can see both points. On the one hand, he was excited to learn about it, and
So he initially started, really excited about it, but then just because of how difficult it was to learn with the learnability issues, then it was hard.
Which makes it a learnability issue, not a motivation issue, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
looking at it, you're motivated at the interface, but well, I guess it is using it too, though, in a way.
after
Right.
several hours of frustration, you know, again, that's part of the experience. So I would say both, because on the one hand he was excited, and on the other hand he wasn't. So I don't know.
Yeah, I would just change that, but lost interest with learnability. I would just change that, but he ended up feeling frustrated at the design or something.
How about that?
Yeah, that's good.
How about you guys?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing we're gonna get for this.
Yeah.
Motivation was a tricky one, I thought anyway. Trust I thought was a problem, because he didn't trust that his own, like, he didn't trust his hands to do the right thing. You know, he was used to typing in a certain way and had to keep watching his fingers to learn it. So that to me spelled a problem.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I said it was a slight problem.
We in agreement on that one, or? Michael?
So I'm kind of torn on this one, because if he can trust, he could trust that the individual keys will work as they should. You know, if he presses the letter Y, it'll still work. It's just in a different location.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the trust of acting on like what he already knows is comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, see, I tested myself. I tried to do A through Z, and I tried to see how long it would take me. It took me a while. I had to keep going back and forth. I didn't realize until you said something that all the vowels are on one side. But, you know, it took me a while to go A, B, C all the way through. And so I wouldn't have that trust to, if I had my hands there, I would find the keys. I'd have to keep moving my fingers and going, wait, where is that letter? Oh, there it is.
And
Yeah.
trust comes down to control a little bit. So, do you feel like you're in control? Fault
Yeah.
tolerance and feedback. So, the feedback, Michael, I completely agree. He has feedback from the system. He knows what key he's going to hit. But the fault tolerance, like of where he's hitting the keys and feeling like he's in control of his typing, is I think where it goes down. And the reason I said, yeah, exactly, he doesn't feel like he's in control. And the reason I brought it down was part of that Microsoft Word story it had in there, where users were using Word and it was autocorrecting them. And if it autocorrected a wrong word, they lost a lot of trust in the system. And the same thing, even though like it was their typing, it's autocorrecting. Like I just kind of feel it's the same way with a keyboard. If I'm hitting keys and it's giving me the wrong words, I just like, okay, the system can't work. I don't feel like I'm in control. I don't feel like I can do anything.
Right.
That's why I said it was a slight problem.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a 0, because it behaves in a predictable way, but because the rating is like the target user is highly likely to be relaxed and stress-free when working with the system, but he's obviously not. But it behaves predictably, you know.
See,
Yeah, exactly.
I would call it a I would call it hesitation, because he hesitates before typing in the way he's used to. So I would call it like a -1.
That's true. That's true, because he is hesitant to like actually like press the keys.
Mm-hmm. Like he can't just rely on what he's learned or his finger muscle memory. He has to like look for each key that he has to press, and while he will eventually get it, he doesn't right now understand where all the keys are. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I think definitely more on the. It's more of a problem than it is anything.
Yeah, I would call it like a -1, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And visibility I didn't think was a problem, because the keys are very clearly labeled and they're easy. You could find them if you were looking for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think visibility is pretty straightforward for this one.
Yeah, I agree.
because and then number 2 on that, it's probably about as visible as it can be. It says all the data and functionality required for the user to perform his core scenarios are present in the most convenient and useful format known. So maybe they're not all convenient. So it could be a 1, maybe. I don't know, but still not the problem. We're good to keep going.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, now this is the one we got a number. Didn't put any numbers on here.
So where does it say that only we're supposed to number 4?
It says it on
So
the
it's
problem
all-
itself. Underneath the
Yeah.
arrows, it says eager to make his job easier. He bought one of those keyboards, and then right below that it says score -2 to 2 each for the 8 variables, and provide a brief rationale why your score is correct.
And that's why I thought it's in that same box, only the box of number 4. It's not in any other section of the paper.
Yeah.
Because in the book, in the example it gives,
Mhm.
it like numbers them.
Well, to be safe,
So
should we
I don't
number
know.
everything?
I don't think we need to.
I think we can go back and renumber them. If we can get 100% on it still on a second test, I felt very confident that it was only number 4 we needed to. But
yeah, I'm with you. If we can resubmit, if we have to resubmit it, we can. It's not a big deal to make slight changes, put numbers in.
yeah, just push it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. So number 4, efficiency. Let me remind myself. I thought that was a problem because his fingers were used to pressing the keys in a certain way, and so that changed his efficiency.
I don't know. This one is kind of like to me, this one's very similar to the previous problem where it's like, it's what you're used to. I personally prefer like the plus sign one because my fingers just feel so crowded on like that little tiny T.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like it's what you're used to or what you're more comfortable with. So this one is it was just kind of a hard one to rate.
Well, I'm looking at
This
the.
one I didn't rate problem or no problem on this one. I only rated the score and then said why I felt that score was correct, like a brief statement. Like for this one, I said efficiency is a score of 1. The arrow keys farther apart actually reduce efficiency because the inverted T is closer together, and that's the difference. You like the extra space, but I don't like moving my finger down as far when I have to hit it. And then I said it might be higher though than other layouts. Like I'm on a MacBook where the arrow keys are squished together at the top and bottom, so they're the size of the side arrows. I hate it. I always miss the bottom key because it's just too small.
Right.
So I said it was a 1 personally. I scored it as
You
a
mean
1.
a negative one or?
No, a positive 1. It's better
So
than
it
some,
wasn't
but
a
not
problem?
the best.
Wait, do you use 3 fingers when you use like those types of keys?
Yeah, I use 3.
I use 4.
fingers on arrow keys.
You use 4. How do you get? Oh,
I
suppose
use 4.
your hands are smaller though.
Well, they're not. But look, my laptop has like the tiny one where it's like the 2 buttons in one, and I just don't use it. But with like the keyboards, like my fingers would just feel squished because I would use 4 fingers.
You put a thumb on the bottom?
Yes.
How do you get it up there?
thumb. Okay.
Oh, so you do index finger left, thumb bottom, middle
Yeah.
finger top.
No pinky.
Yeah. No pinky. It's my ring finger on the right.
That's wild.
That is wild.
I never heard of using it any other way.
Just bring your middle finger down.
Yeah.
I know, but I want it on both so I can be quicker.
Well, it's like when you're driving a car, you don't put one foot on the brake and one foot on the accelerator.
Well, that's
you use the
completely
same foot.
different.
No, it's not, because you can only
Yes,
go forward
it is.
or backwards. You can't go forward and backwards.
Don't you play any racing games, Ivy? You can only hit the
I
gas.
do. I play racing. Well, I used to. I don't anymore. But it's just quicker to have them both on one. Or no. You know what I mean.
That's funny. That's just not comfortable at all for me to put my thumb there. Anyway, we're losing track. So you're saying it's not a problem on the efficiency?
I said a positive 1. I mean, I didn't give problems or not problems, but I give it a positive 1. The target user, where's efficiency? I'm off. Efficiency 1 was overall user performance is better than most similar designs. And it's not the best. It's not the most productive of any comparable design. I think that's the T personally, but it's better than like the squished keys or any other keyboard layout I could think of.
Well, see,
That was my opinion.
I was thinking it was less efficient because he had to switch back. He couldn't get the hang of it.
Because
Well,
it was
that
less
doesn't
efficient
mean
than
it
the
wasn't
T,
efficient.
but not the. Yeah, it doesn't mean it wasn't efficient. Exactly,
Yeah.
Ivy. Maybe it's
It's like
less
the
efficient than the
Dvorak
T,
keyboard.
but maybe not other ones.
Well, but that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. Like, is it efficient to the user or is it efficient in general? That's the question.
We're just adding the score though, so like we're scoring it off with the scores. Like the scores for this one is the users of the interface are more productive than with comparable designs. User performance is better than most similar designs. Productivity in the member target group is typically Oh, if we're thinking about just the user's performance. Wait a minute, I see what you're saying here
Yeah.
now, Steven. We're
'Cause
talking
it's-
about the user. If we're
I
talking
mean,
about Ken's
Yeah, because
performance
otherwise
with
we're
this
not
one,
just...
how would we score for Ken?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it was just a general score for anyone, then why would they give us a use case scenario?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
this one was actually confusing for me because I was like, how do I know if it's more efficient or not? I haven't seen any like data
Yeah.
on it, so I get what you're saying.
So it is below average of what he normally has using this design. This would be below average for him. Our some tasks yield the worst performance possible. So it'd probably be a -1. I can see what you're saying. I can agree with you, Stephen. If we're looking at this through the lens of Ken,
Yeah.
only Ken's data, with
Well,
him compared to his
Well, that's
other
all we
keyboard,
know.
it's a negative.
That's all we know in this circumstance. We're not arguing like semantics of yes, that direction down would be more efficient. We're arguing that for Ken, this is a less efficient system.
Yep. I agree. -1.
What about
Michael,
you,
you
Yeah,
okay?
-1.
Mike?
Yeah, I think so. If it's just for Ken, not like a generalized
We could
score.
specify after that. However,
I would
Maybe
say
right
that.
under problem 4, we should say all of our answers are. This is looking through the lens of only Ken, or something like that.
or we could say,
Let me just go
however,
through it.
in a general use case.
This might score as a 1. There we go.
Are you gonna put a negative in front of that one?
Yeah, I need to change it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you hadn't changed it.
This might prove to be more efficient. How about that?
I would still put like that disclaimer at the top that was mentioned.
Yeah. What? Why is this ridiculous? Sorry, I'm... There we go, that looks better.
Nice.
Okay, so answers specific to Ken and his experience. Learnability, I don't think that was the problem because he could have learned it if he wanted to. And the directions were exactly the same as what he knew, so that was clearly not the problem. So I would say learnability is probably 2, I would say. Or
But are we making it specific to Ken, or was whatever
Yeah.
his name was, or
yeah,
to
I
a
mean,
general audience?
even for Ken, I feel like Ken could learn it if he wanted to, and relatively simply. It's not like he's learning a whole new keyboard. He's learning that the key is slightly lower.
So I'm kind of split on this one because the 3 subtopics below learnability are your day 0 experience, partial proficiency, and expert. Like, so the day
Yeah.
0 experience, you have to get to a day 1. You have to get past that first initial thing. And Ken didn't even get past a couple hours, right? He's
Yeah.
like, well, I hate this. So the day 0 was kind of low, which is why I ranked it more of a 1 than a 2, just because I was like, virtually all members should be able to, master this, but Ken hated it so much he got rid of it.
I agree with that actually.
And so maybe it's even lower than that. It is likely that a few of the users will achieve expert status, or a majority of the users will achieve intermediate proficiency level. It is probable that a few members of the target user group, and this is where it's hard. If it's just Ken, it's unlikely he's ever going to get to advanced because
So
he gave
0.
up on it. But yeah,
Probably a 0 then, huh?
yeah, he might go back to it one day.
What's that? Yeah, he might go back to it one day.
And in this one, just like the Dvorak keyboard, is they spent a few hours attempting to learn it, and they both gave up after a while because it was too difficult to learn.
I wouldn't say it was not how difficult it was to learn, because it obviously was difficult a little bit, you know?
Right, but
because sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Because not difficult at all is like the stove things, you know, it's easy to like turn. So I think it would still prove difficult to like adjust to it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it would still be difficult. But I also think, because I also still think it's from like his unwillingness, though.
Or should I say something about the learnability of the keyboard, that it probably wouldn't be hard for him to learn?
Yeah, I guess probably if you said something like if he gave it like a week, he probably would have had it down.
But we're giving it a lower score because he gave up on day 0, maybe.
Yeah.
This is also a hard one because, like, for me, it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to learn. But obviously, he spent several hours. It wasn't just a couple minutes and he gave up on it. Like, he spent a good amount of time.
Yeah, a day, I think, is what it says.
It says a couple hours. He switched back to his old keyboard.
Well, how about so this is what I've got. If Ken were to devote effort to learn the keyboard, he would be likely to become efficient. He would likely become efficient.
Yeah.
Because it's really, I mean, there's nothing different. It's not like the key is very far away. It's just slightly lower than he's used to. With enough time, and if surely not much time, he would be able to pick it up real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one. I might say if you were to devote additional effort or more effort, because just to acknowledge the effort that he already did make.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he gave it no effort at all. He just quit.
Okay, we cool?
Yeah.
Cool by me.
Alright, so mapping, I didn't think that was the problem because, again, the key was very close by and clearly defined.
Wait, did we just skip familiarity and
simplicity? I skipped simplicity. I had my cursor there, so I thought that was the next line. Familiarity.
I think we're on familiarity.
Yeah, I think familiarity was probably the main problem. Let's have a look what the scores say. Yeah, I think this would be the -2 on this one. That's in my opinion.
Really? I don't think it's very different. Like, it's just the key is moved down. It's not like
right, but he's unfamiliar with
new.
It, which is what this one's about, is his familiarity with the layout.
I gave this a 1. Let me recheck with this new lens of Ken's though. I'd see it's what he's encountered before though, so it's not like if he looked at it, he'd be able to know this was arrow keys, and he did when he looked at it at the store. He knew, like, he was familiar that this was arrow keys. He just wasn't familiar with the specific layout, so it's not it's not indistinguishable, but it is very familiar. So it's not his usability with it. He was able to distinguish what it was and be able to try to use it.
Well, listen to the -2. Previous experience will severely handicap the user's attempt to use the interface. So he's used to doing something a certain way, which handicaps his current experience trying to do it this certain way.
Right, consistency and compatibility are the things. How one part of the design resembles another. It's consistent with other designs, but it's not compatible. Yeah.
Read that -2 there. That sounds like exactly Ken's problem.
Maybe it's some -1 though. It's likely to mislead the user, to be counterproductive. I don't think it severely handicaps him. If he slowed down, he could probably do it fine, but it does mislead him. I could go with a -1 reading those. I feel like the design's consistency is pretty similar with the other one, but because of his past experience with the T design, he is having issues hitting that bottom key. Because that's the consistency too. Actually, consistency when I'm reading through it is talking about, like, if you're using a Mac and your close buttons are on the left and then you go to Windows and they're on the right, you always hit the left side. You're like, oh shoot, you have to hit the right side. It happens to me all the time at work. And so that is a problem for me with familiarity. And it'd be the same with him with these arrow keys. So I can see this as a -1. It's misleading him, but it's not like he can't not use it.
Right.
Are you okay with that, Ivy, Michael? I don't know.
I actually agree with you because it says previous experience will like severely handicap. I don't think he was severely handicapped. I think he was just like, I like my other design better. You know?
This works better for me. Yeah, I can see that point.
Right.
Yeah, I would go with more of a 0, just because it's so close to something he's already familiar with. Where it's only a slight adjustment. I don't think it's different enough to severely handicap his performance.
And I see the -1 being where I'd like to end, because it says because it does mislead the user to be counterproductive, and I think this was done in an effort to become more productive, but it made him less productive. So because it became counterproductive, he got rid of it. If it was a neutral experience, he wouldn't have got rid of it.
I think I'm on that -1 still because of that too. And reading this paper, this chapter, whatever, under consistency, talk about the doors as well. If you remember reading about these doors, it says if every door in the universe was different, like how horrible would that be? We could look at every door and say, oh, this door is a door. Like, I know it's a door. I know the arrow keys are arrow keys, but how the arrow keys are, how I'm opening this door, how this door is actually functioning is giving me a headache. And that's kind of what's happening to Ken. So
it's like using someone else's shower.
Yes.
It's impossible.
Oh man, I went to my uncle's house once, and the shower, to turn on the shower, instead of pulling up on the thing, you have to pull down on the nozzle. And I couldn't figure it out. So I sat and splashed water on myself because I couldn't figure out how to plug the tub or turn on the shower. It was the worst experience of my life. Familiarity kicked my butt that day. It was a -2 experience.
It was -2 on motivation too.
Yes, it was.
Love that. I didn't think simplicity was a problem, obviously, because the keys were functionally the same and perhaps simpler because of the alignment. Like the down arrow was actually lower. So I don't know. I thought that was actually.
Yeah, that's what I put 2. I gave it a 2.
Yeah,
I
would
gave
give that a 2.
Yeah.
The amount the user needs to know to use the system. Smallest and simplest mental model currently known. I think so. On arrow keys, probably more simple than the T.
I think it's probably more like simple and efficient.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's the most optimal way to. So mapping. Wrong. I went to the wrong one. Hold on a second.
I think that one's like a 1. So, well, I don't know.
The interface encourages the user to form a consistent mental model and discourages the user to creating, or should be from creating, or retaining an inconsistent mental model.
Because you look at it and you don't have to think about it, you know?
No. And
so I don't think that he kept like losing it. But he also kind of did because he changed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he kept losing that mapping like in his mind.
Right.
I think that's more of a familiarity problem, like being familiar with where the key's going, than it was a mapping issue. Like the arrows are on the keys; those are great metaphors of what the keys are supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. I know that if I look at it, I'm going to understand it every single time. It's definitely in my mind what it's supposed to be. I get what you're saying though, Ivy, too, because when he actually starts putting his fingers on there, he like loses that map just a little bit. But I don't think that's the map in his brain. Like he doesn't lose the understanding of the system. He just muscle memory is hitting that middle key instead of the bottom arrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to read number 1. That is like the longest sentence ever.
Well, it looks
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it's
that's
broken
about
down
it.
into 3 parts: metaphors, direct education, and deductive reasoning. So I think it definitely gets points for deductive reasoning. Like, you can easily see that if it's not going to work when I press down in the middle, it's going to be just below that.
Doesn't need direct education. Like, you
Nope.
don't need a...
Metaphors read this right through. There's arrow keys. It talks about like writing BINU for the bold, italic, and underline.
Mhm.
Like, it writes it up there in words so you can see it. That's the same thing as arrow keys. It has arrows exactly for the direction you're going to be going. And
Right.
deductive reasoning is more like they leave the keys unpainted and they just expect you to figure it out because they're in an arrow pattern. You'd be able to click them, which is the worst way you can teach a user.
Right.
I personally think this is well mapped because it has great metaphors. They're in the right location, laid out
Mhm.
correctly, like in an arrow shape or in a cardinal shape. I think it's great mapping myself.
That's true.
So I would put this as a 2, only because on all 3 of those main points, it hits the mark.
Right. And I'm happy to discuss that too, but that's what I scored it as was a 2.
What about you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just kind of confusing because at the top we put like what it was for Ken specifically, and I feel like we're starting to like deviate from that. So maybe we should take that away
Well,
from the top so it
that's a
doesn't
good.
get
Well,
confusing.
that's a good point. Do we want to discuss for Ken as well as discuss for in general?
I still think Ken has a good mental model of what this is. I think the
Yeah.
mapping's still good for Ken as long as when he's looking at it. I just think it's familiarity still where he's missing the key. Like, I
That's
don't think he
true.
has a bad mental map at all of what this arrow key is supposed to be doing.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree with that point where he knows where it's supposed to be. He just has trouble executing it because he's not unfamiliar with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because of his familiarity, he goes back to his old ways. But that's not the fault of the mapping. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
I think motivation was a problem. I'm gonna
Yep.
change mine to a 1 because I think.
Maybe a -1 even.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
negative.
I would
I
say
meant negative
negative
1.
1.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd prefer not to use the interface. He doesn't hate the interface, but he's not preferring to use it. Very aesthetically, that's pleasing. I mean, when I look at it, it's aesthetically pleasing. He wanted to buy it because it seemed pleasing, but the reward of using it was too low.
Yeah. And I think it's not a 0 because if it was a 0, he would just stick with it
Yeah.
since it's motivation.
I spent money on it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if something's gonna be harder to use, you're not gonna use it. You might take it back.
Exactly.
Like, if he only used it a little bit, he might be able to take it back and get a refund. Probably not, but I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that motivation?
I think it's good.
I didn't think trust was a problem, because he knew that if he missed the key, if he didn't press the right spot, he could just press it slightly lower and find the key.
I think I would give it either a 0 or a -1. I wish I could give it both because it behaves predictably, but he's also hesitant to use it because he doesn't trust his control over it, if that makes sense.
You're right.
That's
Control is
almost
an
exactly what I
aspect.
said. And I gave it a score of 0. I said the cursor behaves the cursor keys behave predictably every time he hits them, but every time he misses them, he's going to be losing more and more trust with it because of his familiarity issue. So I scored it as a 0, but I could be convinced to be a -1.
If you don't mind putting what you wrote into the chat of this video call, I'll just do that.
Do you want to copy yours over, Ivy, or do you want me to copy mine?
Oh, sorry.
Whichever one.
I actually hadn't written that, but while reading it, I was like, oh,
This
that
is
makes sense.
This is what I put, which is pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's the same. It's great. Pretty much think alike.
But if we're talking about Ken's particular experience, though, I think it would be a -1.
Yeah. I think this is localized to Ken. This whole description. So I'm okay with what's written, but Ivy, go ahead and make your point. I'd like to hear it.
I still, it's both to me, because it behaves predictably, but also because we're talking about Ken's specific case, he is hesitant to use the system. That's exactly what it says, and he's hesitant to use it. But it also behaves predictably. It's just that Ken isn't behaving predictably. I don't know. -0.5.
How about that one?
You could adopt us a point. It'll be funny though.
I think that's kind of funny.
I think we should leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point as well. So I don't have strong feelings either one.
I think we can go to visibility, which was not a problem. I think we can all agree.
Yeah,
I gave
just
it
like
I
the
gave it
last
a
one,
1.
it's straightforward. I would maybe even say it's a 2.
Yeah, I think it's a 2.
Do you think it's the most convenient and useful format known?
For me, yes, I would prefer to use that.
But this is relative
But
to
I use
Ken,
my
though.
forefinger.
Well,
That's true.
Only because it's with Ken, I'd give it a 1. Because you're right, this could be argued either way, depending on the user. It really depends on the user on a ton of design. I mean, it's all your target user audience, which all comes down to preference, especially when we're talking about emotions for motivation. It's all user preference. But for Ken, I think it's 1 because I think there's a more convenient and useful one for him. I could be given a 2 if it was anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
I think the layout's smarter as a plus sign than a T, but I'm so used to the T, it would be hard for me to go to the plus. Unless I used my thumb.
Yeah, who would do
It's
that?
faster. It's faster.
I have to think of 4 fingers instead of just 3, though.
How about this?
I only got so much brain power.
The keys were clearly laid out, which was the original allure to the keyboard, the new keyboard. In a general use case, we would award a 2. However, Ken's ideal of convenience is different.
I like that.
There you go.
Yeah, that works.
Cool, and that's it for this one.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, before everyone goes, maybe we should look over our other one and try and get it amended.
How long do we have to do the amendment? Because if we need to meet
Don't
again
know.
to talk about our senior project and divide it up, could we maybe hunch those 2 together since we've been going an hour and a half?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't want to push things off and make us lose points. I agree with that, but I'm hitting some other deadlines I got to get done by midnight.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's call it a night then, and make plans to hopefully get everyone together. I don't think we've done that yet.
Yeah.
So I'm good with the answers that we've got, and again, once maybe we'll have to make amendments to both, and we can just fix both in the same night.
Yeah, that would be
Yep. I'd be good with that.
That'd be the ideal scenario if we had to make any amendments at all. I'd like to not, but if we have to, you know.
Do you know how long we have to amend it though? Did she say
It
anything?
Didn't say.
Okay, that's fine then.
I'll look through the documents if you guys want me to, and I can post later in Slack and see if I find anything.
Yeah, I've already made a couple of little adjustments on my end for things that were obvious. But obviously I can't remember what those were, but there were a few things that were obvious, and we can talk about them when we do it together later. So yeah. Anyway, I'll end the video, and I'll upload it and put it in the comments of the submission.
Excellent.
All right, awesome.
All right, you all have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Bye.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.